What's up guys, it's me Jeremy. So the Assassin reworks have been up on the PB for a couple of days now, and of course people are starting to figure them out a little bit better, and there's a lot of stuff floating around, but there's definitely still tons of just really interesting bits of information and specific changes and just interesting quirks that aren't really public knowledge yet, so we've decided to throw together a list of just random facts about the Assassin reworks in general that hopefully will tell you something new about them that you haven't heard before. And I want to give a big shout out to ProGuides.com for helping out with the editing on this video. They recently released a new app for iOS that's actually pretty awesome, and they do a free trial on their site, so you can check it out with the link in the description. And if you guys enjoyed the video, definitely hit that like button, and let's begin. So first up, we're taking a look at some of the interactions with Talon's new E, Assassin's Path. So this ability lets him leap over terrain on a pretty short cooldown. And the only real restriction is that he can't leap over the same piece of terrain for a while, so he can't just keep juking backwards and forwards forever over the same wall. So what you might not know actually is that Talon's E, of course, works for all player-made terrain. So it works for jumping over Talia's wall, Trundle's pillar, Anivia's wall, works with Jarvan's ultimate as well. All of those abilities can be hopped over by Assassin's Path, so it seems like they are correctly coded as terrain rather than minions now. The only player-made terrain that he can't vault over is Azir's ultimate, since it of course has the knockback effect attached to it. But the thing is that if you have a spell shield, you actually can vault over Azir's ultimate as well, which is a pretty neat interaction. So for the next thing, it was something that was kind of random, but I thought it was just really cool. So for you PvE players amongst you, you guys are going to know that Rengar was definitely disabled pretty quickly after the Assassin update was patched in on the PvE. Although, since no one really got the chance to play him before he got disabled, a lot of people probably might not have known why he actually got disabled on the PvE. But the thing is that he had a bug where his laugh emote would actually trigger his Empower W an infinite number of times. So we actually have some footage showing the bug in action provided by Surrender at 20, and you can see every time Rengar goes to use his laugh emote, he just casts his Empowered W over and over again, dealing a ton of damage and potentially healing an infinite amount too if people were actually damaging you. I don't really know what happened in the code to make this possible, but this bug is actually just so crazy. It was hilarious. Now our next thing that we're taking a look at might actually be a bug, so it's possible that it might not make it onto the live servers, but we're not entirely sure if it's a bug or if it's working as intended. It might actually be working as intended. So there's this new item that's being added to the game called Poacher's Dirk, and essentially the way it works right now is that you stack it up 3 times by stealing large monsters from the enemy jungle, and then after 3 times it transforms into a serrated Dirk, which is worth about 350 gold more than the original Poacher's Dirk purchase. The difference now though is that once you already have a serrated Dirk, you only actually need 1 stack from the enemy jungle to transform a new Poacher's Dirk. So you can actually get multiple serrated Dirks really easily through this mechanic, which does actually seem pretty overpowered since the new lethality stat is actually quite awesome. I'm not sure if it's a bug or if it's working as intended, but at the time of making this video, that is how it is on the PBE right now. So our next thing we're taking a look at is the actual math values of the new stat that's coming to League of Legends Lethality. So it's the replacement for flat armor penetration, and with Riot's explanations, they've been kind of vague on what this stat actually does. So just so you guys know, 1 point of lethality is actually equivalent to 0.4 points of flat armor penetration, plus an extra 1/30th of flat armor penetration per the target's level. So it's kind of complicated, but essentially items that give you 20 lethality are therefore giving you 8 flat armor penetration plus 2/3 of a flat armor penetration per the target level. So the per level scaling portion can give you up to 12 points, which means that against a level 18 character, 20 lethality is giving you 20 flat armor penetration. And so based on those stat calculations, it does seem like lethality is a little bit weaker than the flat armor penetration that items previously gave before it, but it is kind of nice that it does scale in power as the game goes on, and it definitely makes the stat a lot more fair. You know, the whole idea is that you're supposed to be gaining more penetration as the game goes on so that it scales with the opponent's armor per level. So you aren't going to be super crazy snowball-y when you first buy some lethality, and it's not also going to be totally useless in the late game when the armor scales up and the champions just have more armor in general because of their armor per level. So the next thing we're taking a look at is just some of the new mechanics with Katarina and just like the quirks and the nuances of Katarina's new abilities for you advanced Katarina players out there. Specifically starting with her Shunpo. So originally Shunpo on Katarina would always put you behind the target, which kind of gave people an idea where Katarina was going to jump to in order to catch her out when she started to engage. So it was a very predictable location of where you would actually Shunpo to before the rework. But with the new rework of Katarina, Shunpo will now jump Katarina to anywhere around a unit, and the player actually has control over where that's going to be despite the lack of any range indicator or anything like that. So it's actually controlled by the player's mouse offset relative to the target. So if you have your mouse on one side of the target when you Shunpo to them, it's going to cause your Shunpo to land on that side, or the same for the other side. Alongside that, the area of effect damage from picking up a dagger is based on when you pick it up, not where the dagger is actually itself, so you can kind of plan where you want the area of effect of the dagger to actually hit. Another cool feature of the Katarina rework is that her Q bouncing blade will always drop a dagger 350 units behind the first target you hit, and it also always takes the same amount of time to bounce to get to the ground after the first hit. So the idea here with this is that you won't be punished for bouncing the dagger to multiple people, and everyone kind of has a bit of an idea where she might be able to Shunpo to after throwing out her Q. Shunpo's all around just a better ability than it used to be, although it now does have a very short cast time of 0.075 seconds before the blink actually happens, so it is very slightly slower than it was before, so you do have to be a little bit more careful with your timing, but it's still pretty fast in general. And next up after Katarina, we're taking a look at some Rengar mechanics, and so far it's seeming like Rengar is definitely going to be super awesome to play. So just so that you guys know, his leap range is set to 725 units, and it won't change like it used to when stacking Bone Tooth Necklace before, and his jump is also now offset slightly from the target in the direction that he came from, where he would land dead center in the middle of his target's model. Something a lot of players have also been wondering is if his Q will still reset his auto attack timer since it's no longer an auto attack enhancer. And yes, his Q definitely does. It does reset his auto attack, and on top of that, he can also cast all of his spells while leaping in mid-air. You probably won't be able to fit all of them during the time of a jump, but you can cast every single one of them individually, so you can definitely still put out a ton of fast damage and combos with Rengar if you line up your abilities properly and get the right jump off. Another cool fact to do with Rengar's ultimate is that it will put eyes over the target now, and it kind of like puts this indicator over them that actually both teams can see when he's revealing an enemy champion with it, which gives both your team the chance to decide how to engage with you, and the enemy team will get a chance of like which direction or who Rengar is kind of aiming for, so that they can plan out some counterplay. The last interesting thing we have about Rengar is that his exclusive item from Rengar versus the Kha'Zix minigame called The Hunt Is On. You know, if he manages to kill Kha'Zix during the event, he gets the head of the Kha'Zix item instead of the Bone Tooth Necklace, and now what it does is that it essentially gives him a hidden 6th stack on his Bone Tooth Necklace, which pushes the Bone Tooth Necklace values up to 21 flat AD and 42% bonus AD, which is actually a pretty massive reward if he manages to get a kill or an assist on Kha'Zix during the minigame before Kha'Zix can score one on him for that 4th evolution. And since we're busy covering a bunch of the mechanics and just tricks of some of the newer champions, might as well keep going, and we're talking about LeBlanc. So first up, with LeBlanc's new rework, her passive that gives you the mark when you hit someone with an ability has a 1.5 second delay exactly before you can trigger the mark for bonus damage. So definitely you're going to have to get used to that 1.5 second delay. But also something that's kind of interesting is that proccing the mark doesn't actually count as an attack or spell for Thunderlords. So you can't actually trigger Thunderlords with 2 abilities in your passive, despite having some similar interactions like that on different champions. LeBlanc's Distortion on W has also already had a bit of a buff because the dash speed was reduced on the live servers, where now in the rework the dash speed of her W is back to the pre-nerf speed. But it does come at a cost though, because there's now a brief delay of about 0.3 seconds before you can actually blink back to your W. So you can no longer just instantly blink back. And our last thing about LeBlanc is just some stuff with her ultimate. So first up, her ultimate doesn't actually have its own animation, so your opponents can't see it's coming unless they're going to anticipate what you're likely to use it for. And of course, the clone with your ultimate on your ultimate that spawns will also grant you a little bit of vision. So although it's not necessarily a huge amount, it could definitely come in useful if it was maybe in a brush and you wanted to face check or check it for traps or stuff like that. The next thing we're taking a look is something with Zed. Now Zed hasn't had a lot of changes, but his ultimate did get a pretty cool buff where he gains permanent attack damage when killing an enemy based on the enemy's attack damage at the time that he gets the kill. And on top of that, he actually now laughs when he kills an enemy that was marked for death, so I guess he's pretty happy with his free AD for sure. Akali's W also received a handy change because it was turned into a blink that drops her Twilight Shroud at her original position, rather than just dropping a Twilight Shroud in general. Since it's a new movement ability, it actually lets Akali use her W to jump over walls, turning it into a really awesome escape tool for when the stealth just isn't going to be enough to survive. Anyway, that just about wraps up our list for some random facts that I thought were pretty cool about the new Assassin reworks. Hopefully you guys found something useful or just interesting or cool that you didn't know before, since a lot of these changes and updates and kind of like the quirks and the nitty-gritty stuff weren't all that clear, and it can definitely take a lot of time to learn all the ins and outs when Riot changes champions like this so drastically. Either way, looks like that's gonna be it for me. If you guys enjoyed the video, drop a like, subscribe if you want. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.